So you're back with another reaction video. This time I'm reacting to Wellington's triumph, Vitoria 1813 by Epic History TV. Now I admit I'm a bit behind reacting to this, and because I've been reacting to other historical content that I wanted to get out of the way, and other videos. So basically, if for those who don't know, this is part of the Napoleonic War series by Epic History TV, and judging by the title, it's basically the conclusion of the Peninsula War, which was if I remember rightly, caused by Napoleon's very badly judged invasion of Spain. So I'm not going to ramble on too long. So the usual disclaimer when I react to any historical content: if I don't show off of what is considered a proper reaction, it's probably because I don't have much knowledge on the subject at hand, and if I do have anything that I know, I might most likely pause the video and give my input, or I might ask some curious questions that hopefully will be answered in the comments below. So the link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go and subscribe to Epic History TV, check them out, support their channel, and put likes on their videos if you want. And so, without going on too much longer, let's get this up on screen and let's see what happens. While the Allied armies have seized the initiative and were on the march, the French armies were scattered all over Spain. Marshal Jourdan, Chief of Staff to King Joseph of Spain.
May 1813. While Napoleon's Grande Armée began its fight back in Central Europe following the disastrous invasion of Russia, 1,200 miles away, at the other end of Napoleon's embattled empire, another enemy was poised to strike. The previous year, Wellington's Anglo-Portuguese army had won a brilliant victory at Salamanca, but been held at Burgos and forced into a long, demoralizing retreat.
Well, the thing is, if people don't remember that, Wellington had to retreat because he was in danger of being cut off from powerful French armies in the north and south. So, unfortunately, to make sure that he did not get cut off and surrounded, he had no choice but to retreat back to the Portuguese border.
Back to the Portuguese frontier. But after a winter of rest, reinforcement and training, Wellington's army was stronger than ever. 100,000 men, many of them battle-hardened veterans. And for the first time, he had sufficient cavalry and artillery, while transport and medical services had also been improved. Morale was sky high.
I bet it was.
Their chief, known to the troops as Old Nosy, was cheered wherever he went. "I never saw the British army so healthy or so strong," Wellington informed London. In contrast,
bearing in mind, if you remember that a lot of people say that, I think some people say that the British army probably could not withstand France's Grande Armée. Sorry if I'm butchering that pronunciation. But it's amazing what one, and this is like how should I say it, that even in Britain there is quite an admiration for Napoleon. I know Britain and France still have that, banters, if you want to call it, between each other, but believe it or not, I do have quite a certain admiration for Napoleon, because no matter what nation you're from, I think I'm probably wrong in saying this, but it just takes one individual to lead a nation to greatness. I'm sorry if that sounds really dumb coming from me. What new? I'm sorry if that sounds really dumb, but that's the best way I can put it. It's like, it just takes that one individual to bring a nation to greatness, basically. And so anyway, let's continue before I ramble on.
The French position in Spain was weaker than ever.
Oh yeah.
Napoleon severely underestimated the threat posed by Wellington and had just withdrawn 20,000 French troops,
which you don't hear often. Napoleon making bad calls, because obviously you had this war and then you had that disastrous invasion of Spain. But as it said in the beginning of the video, Napoleon was busy in Germany trying to fight back against the Sixth Coalition in Germany, while Spain and Portugal are being aided by Britain. And of course remembering that the French armies in Spain are also overstretched thanks to a guerrilla war raging across Spain and Portugal. Well, mostly Spain, because obviously by this time the French are in no position to invade Portugal again at this point. So, and as the narrator just said, hang on.
For his own use in Germany.
Yeah. Because as the narrator said, because Napoleon underestimated the threat posed by Wellington and his British army, that he withdrew 20,000 troops for his use in Germany. So this puts King Joseph in a very, very bad situation.
As Commander-in-Chief, King Joseph knew his forces were overstretched. Napoleon allowed him to give up Madrid and move his capital to the more easily defended Valladolid. But withdrawing further to a strong position like the Ebro River was out of the question. That would send the wrong message to neutral Austria and Napoleon's wavering German allies. And so, with serious concerns, Joseph and his Chief of Staff, Marshal Jourdan, awaited Wellington's offensive. This video is sponsored by Raid: Shadow Legends, the free-to-play RPG in which you build a team of champions to battle the forces of darkness. The game Raid: Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video.
In a few days we shall take the field. The campaign bids us... Sorry, let me restart. In a few days we shall take the field. The campaign bids fair to be most brilliant. I hope to see the Pyrenees before September. Lieutenant George Simmons, 95th Rifles.
Wellington's plan was for his army to advance in two wings, concentrate at Toro, then move against Joseph's forces. In the south, Murray's Anglo-Sicilian Spanish force, based in Alicante, had just repelled an attack by Marshal Suchet at the Battle of Castalla.
Wow.
Murray would now mount a diversionary landing on the Mediterranean coast to coincide with Wellington's advance and prevent Suchet sending reinforcements north. Wellington had also counted on large-scale support from Spanish regular forces.
Oh, and just a reminder that Spain and Britain have had a long history of conflict, so bear in mind, Spain and Britain, I think it's safe to say, uneasy allies.
Of which he was, since November 1812, theoretically, Commander-in-Chief. But the Spanish Cortes, based in Cadiz, was deeply divided, with many still highly suspicious of British motives.
Wow.
The result was that Wellington would only receive direct support from a few reliable Spanish divisions. Fortunately, he would receive considerable Spanish support from the guerrillas, now better armed, organised, and operating in greater numbers than ever before.
I just want to quickly say that the British Royal Navy was also supplying the guerrillas with cash and equipment and weapons, often landing them behind enemy lines.
4. A large area of Valencia had effectively been liberated by El Fraile, the Friar.
Okay.
Esposimina had captured major towns in Navarre and was currently keeping General Clausel's Army of the North busy, while Juan Martín Díaz, aka El Empecinado, was tying down large numbers of French troops near Madrid.
Farewell, Portugal, I shall never see you again. Marquis of Wellington, Portuguese frontier.
On the 22nd of May, Wellington bid farewell to Portugal and began his advance. 4 days later, he was in Salamanca, from where he joined the northern wing of his army under Sir Thomas Graham. Joseph and Jourdan expected Wellington's main thrust to come from Salamanca, so planned to defend the line of the Douro River. But Graham's rapid advance north of the river meant they'd already been outflanked, and they ordered a retreat. By a series of brilliant marches, Wellington continued threatening the French right flank, forcing Joseph to keep falling back. Wellington's army was able to use small roads and mountain tracks north of the main highway, which the French had dismissed as impassable. But thanks to his Spanish allies, Wellington knew better. Backed by British sea power, he was also now able to switch his supply base from Lisbon to Santander, drastically reducing the length of his supply lines, another feat the French had written off as impossible. At the Ebro River, the French found themselves outflanked yet again, and fell back to Vitoria. Here, Joseph decided that he must make his stand. The Zadorra River valley west of Vitoria seemed to offer a strong defensive position. Expecting an attack from the west, French forces were drawn up in 3 lines. General Gazon's Army of the South formed the first line. Then General d'Erlon's Army of the Centre. Then General Rey's Army of Portugal. Joseph hoped that he could at least buy time for the vast wagon convoy assembled east of the city to get away. It contained not only military supplies, but his government's treasury. And, as satirized by this contemporary British cartoon, the accumulated loot of 5 years' French occupation of Spain, including priceless works of art, jewels and antiques. He also expected General Clausel to arrive with 20,000 reinforcements any day. However, thanks to the guerrillas, Wellington was better informed of Clausel's whereabouts than Joseph himself. Knowing that Clausel couldn't reach Joseph before the 22nd of June, he decided to attack on the 21st. The day before, French patrols reported enemy troop movement to the north, so Rey's troops were moved to cover any threat to the army's line of communications. Apart from 1 division, which left to escort part of the wagon convoy to France. An odd decision that deprived the army of 4,000 men.
Just a quick question. I know this is a bit off topic to what's gonna happen. When did the Portuguese royal family return to Portugal from their colony of Brazil? Because I don't know how fast word gained to them in their colony of Brazil when they could safely return to their country. Sorry, I just thought I'd ask that random question.
On the eve of battle, Marshal Jourdan had been bedridden with fever that day. The next morning, he reconnoitred the army's position with King Joseph. They agreed that their position was overextended and should be shortened. But by the time their orders reached General Gazon, it was too late. He was already under attack.
Right, let's see what happened. A sharp firing on the right gave us notice that the ball had been opened. Second Lieutenant George Lestrange.
Wellington, enjoying the advantage in numbers for once, had decided to attack in 4 columns across a 10-mile front, with General Graham's left-hand column threatening Joseph's line of retreat. It was a bold plan, with the potential to trap and destroy Joseph's army, but required careful coordination and precise timing. Fortunately, the French had not thought it necessary to destroy any of the bridges over the Zadora River, which was also fordable in several places. At 8 AM, General Hill's column began its attack on the Allied right. Spanish and British troops advanced up the western heights of Puebla, driving off French skirmishers, and forcing General Gazan to send reinforcements to secure his left flank. Hill's troops then seized the village of Subiana, but French cannon fire and counterattacks prevented any further advance. Convinced that Hill's attack was the main assault, and that troop movements to the north were probably a diversion, Jourdan continued to send troops from the centre to reinforce the left. This was exactly what Wellington wanted, but at 11 AM he was waiting with growing impatience for his other columns to go into action. Lord Dalhousie's 7th Division, supposed to be leading the attack by the centre-left column, had got held up in the mountains, while further east, Graham's flanking move had got off to a cautious start. But seeing the size of the approaching force, General Ray decided to pull back his troops across the Zadora River. This encouraged Graham to get things moving. Colonel Longa's Spanish division advanced on Durana, held by Spanish troops loyal to King Joseph, and a bitter struggle for the village ensued. British and Portuguese infantry advanced against Gamara Mayor. They were soon engaged in bloody street fighting with the French. This scene shows an attack by the 4th King's Own Regiment of Foot and the 47th Lancashire Regiment. Though they succeeded in driving the French out of the village, they could not cross its bridge over the Zadora, which was expertly covered by French guns.
Come on, you rascals, come on, you fine fellows. General Sir Thomas Picton. Wasn't Picton present at the Battle of Waterloo? Because I swear I'm trying to remember the film because I haven't seen it for a while. I'm pretty sure Picton was present at the Battle of Waterloo, and I'm pretty sure he said something about his own troops at Waterloo. I could be wrong. Can someone let me know in the comments?
Around noon, a Spanish peasant informed Wellington that the bridge at Tres Puentes was completely unguarded.
Wow.
He immediately ordered Kempt's elite light infantry brigade to dash across it and secure a bridgehead. But there was still little sign of Dalhousie's 7th Division.
Still being held up.
General Picton, the notoriously short-tempered commander of the fighting 3rd Division, ran out of patience. Fed up with waiting for Dalhousie, he ordered his men to advance. They charged across the Mendoza Bridge and a nearby ford, driving back light French defences. General Gazan, with his left flank pinned down at Subiana, was now about to be outflanked on his right, and had no option but to pull back his troops. Wellington's army was now crossing the Zadora River in force. Heavy fighting continued to rage on the heights of Puebla, but here the French also had to give ground to maintain the cohesion of their new line. Scottish Highlanders and Connaught Rangers, supported by riflemen and Portuguese troops, now stormed the village of Arignez, routing the defenders, who retreated southeast, and a gap began to emerge in the French centre between Gazan's army of the south and D'Erlon's army of the centre. The Allied advance continued, with heavy pressure on both French flanks. Wellington's army appeared to be building unstoppable momentum,
Looks like
with Graham's column poised to cut off Joseph's escape.
And then there's that. Artillery and musketry were heard in one continuous, uninterrupted volume of sound. The fire had already become exceedingly violent. Captain Andrew Leith Hay, Wellington's staff. By
4 PM, Wellington's army was formed up across the Zadora, ready to strike a decisive blow. But his infantry came under heavy fire from 76 French guns, blasting great holes in their ranks. Allied guns were brought forward to provide support. The biggest artillery duel of the Peninsular War began. More than 70 guns on each side.
Wow.
Allied skirmishers, exploiting the gap in the French centre near Gomecha, were able to work their way behind the French guns and shoot down their crews. Gazan found himself threatened on both flanks. But instead of trying to close up with D'Erlon to his north, on his own initiative he ordered a retreat that left D'Erlon's own left flank completely exposed. Around the same time, Longa's Spanish troops finally captured Durana, and rumours swept the French army that their escape route had been cut. D'Erlon's army of the centre fought on bravely, withdrawing to another new defensive line just 1 mile west of Vitoria. French guns kept up a steady fire on the advancing Allied lines, but once more the position was outflanked. Around 5:30 p.m, King Joseph bowed to the inevitable and ordered a general retreat.
Yeah, you'd have to retreat. $5 million were abandoned by the French and left upon the ground. Ensign George Bell, 34th Cumberland Regiment of foot.
As the main road to France had now been cut by Longa's Spanish troops, the army would have to retreat east towards Pamplona along a single narrow road with boggy fields on either side. Bad enough for thousands of troops and guns, but there had been no attempt to move off the army's enormous convoy of wagons earlier in the day. The result was pandemonium, as military units and artillery tried to force their way through the streets of Vitoria and the congested lanes and fields beyond. The task of forming a rearguard fell to General Reyes' Army of Portugal, which conducted an organised withdrawal covered by its cavalry.
By the looks of
Wellington hoped that Graham's...
By the looks of it, some of the wagons have gone into the marshy fields. Yeah, I'm probably wrong in saying this, but the wagons should have been sent off first, and then the army follow behind. But I'm not a tactician, so. But personally, I would have all the wagons sent off on this new route before the army. Then I would think that would leave less congestion on this single road to Pamplona.
Column would now be surging across the Zadorra River to cut off the French army's retreat. But Graham, overestimating the enemy's strength, continued to take a cautious approach.
Not a good idea.
East of Vitoria, the French retreat descended into total chaos. The single narrow road became blocked.
Yep.
Wagons that took to the fields got stuck and were abandoned.
Oh, so I was right.
Allied cavalry fell upon this confused mass, spreading panic and meeting little serious opposition.
Wow.
King Joseph and Marshal Jourdan themselves narrowly escaped capture.
Wow.
Among the abandoned wagons, many civilians, including officers, wives and children, priceless paintings, jewels and furniture, and more than 5 million gold.
Just wondering, did these women, did the soldiers' families just become hostages, or were they just were just held prisoner for the rest of their lives?
Francs. Troops on both sides. Among the abandoned wagons, many civilians, including officers, wives and children, priceless paintings, jewels and furniture, and more than 5 million gold francs.
Ooh, wow.
Troops on both sides broke ranks and dived into an orgy of plundering. One British officer described the scene. About dusk, the head of our column came suddenly on some wagons which had been abandoned by the enemy. Someone called out, "They are money carts." No sooner were the words uttered than the division broke as if by word of command, and in an instant the covers disappeared from the wagons and nothing was seen but a mass of inverted legs, while the arms were groping for dollars. For money it certainly was. The scene was disgraceful, but at the same time, ludicrous. Wellington, however, was furious. Not only did the plundering delay pursuit of the enemy, but giant sums of cash, which might have paid for his army's supplies, vanished into private pockets instead. Of 5.5 million francs, only 250,000 were ever recovered by the army.
Jeez.
Vitoria was a great victory for the coalition, not as crushing as it might have been, reflected in relatively light French casualties. But in the chaotic retreat that followed, the Allies did capture all but 2 of 153 French guns, and even Jourdan's Marshal's battery.
Ooh. You have sent me among the trophies of your unrivaled fame the baton of a French Marshal, and I send you in return that of England. The British Army will hail it with rapturous enthusiasm. The Prince Regent to Field Marshal Lord Wellington. So another promotion for Sir Arthur Wellesley.
French military power in Iberia was broken. The Bonapartist Kingdom of Spain was at an end. Joseph returned to France to face his brother's criticism. Marshal Jourdan retired from active service. Napoleon sent Marshal Soult to replace them, but even his shrewd military mind could not turn the tide in Spain.
Wellington's adversary.
Counterattacks to relieve the French garrisons at Pamplona and San Sebastian were defeated. That autumn, Wellington began what proved an unstoppable advance across the Pyrenees and into France. In southern Spain, where Marshal Suchet remained undefeated, the disaster at Vitoria forced him also to withdraw towards the frontier, leaving behind just a few isolated garrisons. After a bitter 5-year struggle, the Allies had brought the Peninsular War, to the Spanish their War of Independence, to a victorious conclusion. It had been a long, hard road, steeped in blood and suffering. The alliance between Britain and Spain had been particularly treacherous to navigate.
Considering Spain and Britain had a long history of conflict.
But ultimately, both nations had fought together with Portugal to drive the French back across the Pyrenees. New research provides a clear...
Would it be wrong for me to say that in this certain situation, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Sort of thing. I'm probably wrong, but it's nice to see that Spain and Britain found a common cause, even though half of the half of the Cortes based in Cadiz were still suspicious of British motives in Spain.
Insight than ever into the huge attrition of French manpower in Iberia. An estimated total of 260,000 lives lost. 3/4 died of sickness. Of approximately 66,000 deaths from combat, 43% were in actions against Spanish regular forces, 38% fighting British-led armies, and 19% fighting guerrillas. By contrast, British military deaths are estimated at 52,000, Portuguese 15,000, with many more thousands of civilian deaths, while Spanish deaths are unknown, though the country as a whole may have lost as many as 500,000 lives in 5 years of war and occupation. For Napoleon, this disaster had been an unnecessary and largely self-inflicted wound. An intervention born of arrogance and false assumptions, with dire strategic consequences.
Bear in mind, at this time, the Spanish field armies in Spain, they weren't as good as the French and British forces at this time, but to be fair to the Spanish forces, they remained defiant and willing to fight. And of course, Britain was kind of, the British and Portuguese forces were also helped by Spanish guerrilla fighters as well, holding down as many French troops as possible. Because like Napoleon himself, he excelled at traditional warfare, but his tactics that helped beat multiple nations and multiple alliances, his tactics weren't really suited to guerrilla warfare. And as you probably know, his disastrous invasion of Russia and the disastrous conclusion of Madrid is what really brought down Napoleon's empire, along with the coalition that he was fighting in Germany, and then his brother, unfortunately, facing an unstoppable momentum from British, Spanish and Portuguese forces in Spain. So,
but as the Napoleonic Empire crumbled in Spain, an even greater struggle neared its climax in Central Europe, where Napoleon faced the most powerful coalition of his enemies yet. If the French Emperor was victorious in Germany, Wellington might soon be scrambling back across the Pyrenees.
Spoiler alert,
the fate of Europe was about to be decided at the Battle of Leipzig.
Which is one hell of it. It was a great episode.
Thank you to History
and hang on.
March for creating the battle map in this video. And thank you to all our Patreon supporters for making this channel.
Okay, that'll do it. This has been another interesting video by Epic History TV, and well, as you've seen for yourself, it was just in the end, it was just an unstoppable momentum of British, Spanish and Portuguese soldiers against the French. But it's nice to see Epic History TV to finally show what happened at Vitoria, or how the British, Spanish and Portuguese forced the French out of Spain, or basically Iberia would be a better way to put it. So anyway, if you like this reaction, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next